you have a code inside you and you don't understand how you work. And I think that there's a fundamentally really interesting aspect of biology in that, like, it's incredibly complex. It's not, you can, in some ways there's like laws about the universe, but your body is just an incredible complexity, and yet you live in it. Like, you are sustained by this complexity, and all these things happen within you and you don't understand why. Hi, my name is Wojcicki. I'm the co-founder and CEO of 23andMe. 23andMe is a direct-to-consumer genetic testing company that allows people to get access to their genetic information and see all about their ancestry, where they're from, who they're connected to in the world, and then also to learn a bunch about their health.
So I like to tell origin stories, or I like to ask about origin stories. How did you get this job? How did you start this thing?
Well, it came out of, I had a science background. I was working on Wall Street for about 10 years. And it was, I was lucky. I was working at a time when there was a lot of interesting innovation, and also when the human genome had just been sequenced for the first time. And I saw there's this incredible potential for what's going to happen when your human code is accessible. And it always seemed fascinating for me. Like, I'd love to see my code. And
what potential did you see, though? I'm just curious what your vision was at that time.
I think to me, it was interesting. It's two aspects of it. So one is that you have a code inside you and you don't understand how you work. And I think that there's a fundamentally really interesting aspect of biology in that, like, it's incredibly complex. It's not, you can, in some ways there's like laws about the universe, but your body is just an incredible complexity, and yet you live in it. Like, you are sustained by this complexity, and all these things happen within you and you don't understand why. Yeah. And so I was always fascinated, like the fundamentals of it is your genetics. And I was also interested in diversity, in that, like, we're similar, we're genetically similar, but we're different. And why is it that my sister can look a certain way and my other sister can have a certain preference, but we're all genetically quite similar, but yet there's these small differences that, like, make you you. Like, technically this is the blueprint for you. So I was always just like, the most interesting thing for me is, like, it's your blueprint. It's as basic as that. And then secondly, it also seemed like there's this incredible potential, is that if you can understand your blueprint, you can understand how to be healthy. And so for me, being surrounded by, living on a medical community, health was always a topic. And what are the things that you can do to be healthier? And why is it that some people get really sick? And why is it, like, I would see some parents are diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and some have asthma and other issues. Like, why? And that was always an interesting question to me. And again, it goes back to the source of the information is, your source code, which is your genome.
So what are some of the advances that you're making now? Like, what's so good about, like, help me understand why someone should send in their DNA to 23andMe. What do I get?
Well, 23andMe is all about giving you access to your genetic information, which again is what I see as your blueprint. And what you can learn from there is your ancestral origins, meaning sort of what parts of the world does your DNA come from. And what we have found is that that's actually a really fascinating area for people to dig into. And you get people, in the last 500 years, people's families have been moving around. And you might think that you're 100% Irish through and through, and then suddenly you find out, well, like, oh, I'm a little bit Spanish, and I have a little bit of French, and like, oh, wow, I have like 5% Chinese. And so we find that it opens people up to this realization that what you look like is very different than what's actually inside, and that what's inside is actually really connected to the planet, not just to this one area. And we find it really connects a lot of people.
Yeah, beyond the connection, and we talked a little bit off camera how meaningful your work is to me. Someone who's adopted, someone who did not have access or has not had access to his identity, original birth certificate, personal medical history or records of any kind. I would go to the doctor and they have 6 to 8 pages of questions, and it would just all get question marks. Don't know, don't know, don't know, don't know. And the doctor would look at me, hey, I need you to fill this out. It's like, hey, I don't have it. It's sealed away in a vault somewhere. I feel it's unfair. So to me, the work that you're doing is a game changer. I mean, it's
sure.
huge for those of us who have been denied access.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the impact, though, beyond connections. I mean, for me personally, I learned that basically I come from 2 areas of the world. I'm about 50% Ashkenazi Jewish.
Oh, wow.
And on the other side, I'm United Kingdom, so like Great Britain, Scotland, Ireland. I'm almost 1% Scandinavian. But it's fascinating to me,
Yeah.
and I never knew that or thought about that before in this particular way. And for me personally, I really couldn't fully live in the present until I reconciled my past, if that makes sense. Help me understand how you see the impact that you're making beyond connections, putting families together and helping other people with medical records.
Well, I think what's interesting that's happening right now is that you have sort of this watershed moment where suddenly everyone's seeing like the mirror for the first time. And so like you obviously see your visible mirror, but it's obviously different when you see your genetic information. And the thing that I've been surprised at in the company is how everyone has a story that's disconnected from what their original perception was.
Right.
Like everyone. And in some ways, like it doesn't matter if you're adopted. Like I found, my mother's brother, he never had children, but he was very active in the 60s, and like turns out he had a child. And so like I never, it took me 10 years of running this company before like that story came out. But everyone has something that comes out that's surprising for them. And it could be about the ancestral side of, you thought you were from part of the world and it doesn't match the family stories. A lot of times it comes out that there's, you have a family member that you did not know about, or that you're not related to a family member that you thought you were related to. It's definitely transformative for adoptees and sperm donor children and egg donor children, because like suddenly, exactly what you said, they have this ability to fill in a lot of gaps where they had holes in their existence, and now they can get it. And it's interesting. It's been interesting for me because it's a level of truth. We always hear about like you don't want to racially profile people, but we do that all day long. And the reality is like without genetic information, I'm always looking at you and making assumptions.
Right.
And so until I actually get your genetic information, until you actually see it, you don't know what's real. And the reality is like because this information hasn't been accessible to people before, it's not just like there's some people who have greater impact in their stories, but it's everyone.
Yeah.
Like everyone out there. And that's why I was actually like, for me, it's like so interesting to document this time period, because it is the first time. Like imagine if you introduced mirrors today and before that you never saw yourself.
Oh, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, this thing that you're doing is literally just an infant, just barely born.
Yeah.
And as I look personally into the next decade or beyond, I'm thinking probably you guys are going to use what you're doing to customize medication, for example. Like, we hear those ridiculous commercials on TV with all those side effects.
Yeah.
I'll bet in a decade, you'll be part of the revolution that says, can you believe that we actually took that with the risk of what it could have done?
Right.
Versus something being specific to our genetics.
Well, that's specifically, I think there's a whole world that's coming. And part of, again, the reason that we started the company was that I didn't see the government or industry seizing on this opportunity of pulling together lots of genetic information and individuals and trying to really solve the problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, in my experience, the government is pulling back. It's still holding on to antiquated laws as far as I'm concerned as an adoptee. This was a law that was started back, I think, probably to protect, they say protect children, but I think it was probably more to protect the reputation of the family, or perhaps whatever the reasoning was. But here we are now in the 21st century, headed to beyond. Things have changed a little bit. We can talk about,
Right.
Complex, even painful conversations,
Right.
in a very adult way.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is everything has changed. Like, there's no such thing really now as, you share your genetic information with lots of people.
One of the things I like about the 23andMe system or process or way of doing things is I have the power, I have the control. And for me, again, my POV, I have never had the control.
Right.
It's always been controlled for me. So if I want to opt in, or if I want to opt out, or if I want to share this or not share that, it's up to me.
Yeah.
And that whole kind of personal, owning your personal medical history is so empowering.
Yeah, totally.
Well,
You should be a spokesperson for us. That's that's kind of our whole message, is that, to me, I find so many aspects of healthcare just insulting.
What have you learned? Like, what's gone wrong, and maybe help calm some of the fears that maybe my parents have. So my dad was very receptive to finding me. Well, he was found. He didn't choose to hide or deny it. My mother did choose to deny it, and still doesn't want to be found to this day. So what do you say to both sets of parents who maybe have different opinions about, coming out and being public about something that happened?
I think that, it's kind of what I said, is that it's sort of this watershed moment where a lot of people are learning information. And the reality is, it's not easy. And we see that for a lot of people. It's interesting because we're regulated on the health side, and people always worry, like, oh, you have an Alzheimer's risk, or you have this risk and causes issue. But it's far greater on the ancestral side. That people have a sense of identity, or in your case, a lack of identity, and relationships, and they want to find them. And that in some ways, that's people can understand and say, oh, I know that there's risk in the family, and you get sick at different times, and everyone's comfortable with that. But suddenly waking up one day and saying everything you thought about yourself is different, really rocks people. So the main thing that I see for people that's helpful is two aspects. So one is patience. It's one thing I said in those early days. People would come, people used to come up to me and they'd be like, I will never do your test. And I was like, okay, don't. That's fine with me. So
These are the same people, by the way, that said they'd never put a credit card into the internet
for sure.
to buy something, right?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. No one likes to be forced to do things. And, advances, I totally get it. You have to wait till you're comfortable.
Yeah. And
people should wait till they're comfortable. I think that the second thing that we've done is, we have over 7 million people who are customers today. And the reality is, there's comfort in numbers.
Well, let me ask you a little bit more about the numbers. So is the quantity important to the body of work? In other words, do you need a big enough sample to make it, this effective or more effective? Do more people need to submit their DNA in order to get to the next phase?
I think it's, we, at every stage, it's kind of like growth, in childhood. At every stage it's exciting because it's new. And so, there's never been data of this size before. Okay.
I guess I'm asking, do you have enough right now? If no one else submitted their DNA, do you have a big enough gene pool to work with to advance?
We always want more. Oh, sure, we have tons of potential. We have tons of potential in drug discovery and making discoveries and connecting people and all of this. But the reality is, understanding the 3 billion base pairs and why you are you and you're not a slug, that's a really complicated problem. And so you need a massive data set to understand that. So I think that's where, it's to really hit that end goal, you need a lot more information. But like I said, at every step of the way, we're kind of the company and the people here, it's overwhelming how many things that we can do with the information we have. So that's why I said it's similar to childhood. At every stage, it's exciting, but there's always more you can do. And so I think that's where there's a push here. Science in general is beautiful because you never stop learning. And there's always more you can learn. We're just scratching the surface.